Hello again. This is Chad Everett Broshears. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. And this is episode 21, which is if you ain't gonna marry her, let her go. Oh, I have problems with this. Now, not necessarily conventional problems. I find that it's pretty nearsighted in thought, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. As you all know from watching this video series, if you have any comments, feedbacks, or anything whatsoever, by all means, please feel free to put it in the comments section. If you like the video, then please share it. Share it openly, share it often. Email it, social media, create an intervention with it. I don't care. Just share it, man, if you like what you hear and you feel that it's going to make a difference for somebody else. All right, so what is some of my problems with this? That is very closely related to the problems I have whenever, or the challenges I see present whenever somebody says a real man behaves this way or a real woman behaves this way, right? Like, I know you guys have seen it. If you've been on Facebook, you've undoubtedly seen these memes come along where it says a real man does, and then there's a list of things that a real man does, and then there's a list of things that a real woman does. Now, that's manipulation. And I won't really go for that so much in this video, but I'm just telling you that it's manipulation, and it's a qualifier disqualifier factor that actually demeans people. And it's kind of like one of those things when somebody says they're having a bad day. What do? Do you have the tools equipped necessary to assist that person with their bad day, or do you leave them up to the challenges of the wild? Myself personally, I'm an intervention specialist in the sense, not in the clinical sense, but in the sense of intervening in people's lives in such a way when they ask for it to disrupt an old pattern and help them develop a new one. So that's the kind of intervention specialist that I am. Again, not in the clinical sense, but in a personal and in my own educational sense. All right, so what are some of the problems with this idea that if you aren't going to marry the person that you're with, you need to take your, actually what I read was, if you're not going to marry her, take your hands off of someone else's future wife. Now, there are several issues with this. All right, first off, I'm glad I didn't marry the women that I dated earlier in my life. And the women that I dated earlier in my life are also glad they didn't marry me at that time. Because of, and I'm friends with almost every single ex-girlfriend that I've ever had. And if we aren't friends, we're acquaintances with no hardships. I don't make relationship enemies. I don't make enemies at all, really. Somebody else chooses to be an enemy, then that's on their behalf. But I don't really actively go out creating enemies on a personal level with people. Belief system enemies, maybe. But that's a different conversation too, because I do enjoy debating, especially whenever it comes to important belief systems. But for this particular video, some of the problems that I have with that particular viewpoint is simple. As I mentioned earlier, I'm glad I didn't marry the women that I dated in my 20s, and also they're also very pleased they didn't marry me then as well. I am an accumulation of all the hardships that I've had, including all the joys that I've had in my life and the setbacks, every single thing that has ever happened in my life. I am the accumulation of that. I have never dismissed any experience because it didn't bring joy or happiness to me. I've decided to create out of the experiences that I've had that were less desirable and create in such a way that I don't come across those less than desirable again unless I can foresee a very strong, valuable lesson coming out of it. Now, if I were to have stepped in back in the day when I was dating any one of these other women and had that Marty McFly moment from Back to the Future, and I flew in and said, "Chad, don't do it. You're messing up. I know I look a bit like you, just a little older, but don't do it. Get in the car." Right? No, man. I would have just, if I could change anything in my past, I wouldn't. Period. Nothing. Not a thing. Not a simple, single thing. If I could change something in my past, not a thing would be changed. None of it. Not a damn thing. No, even the losses that I've had and the heartaches that I've had, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't. So to say that I need to go ahead and interject in a future I don't even know about, that I need to interject right now on my own behalf and on the person that I'm with's behalf and say, I don't need to be with you anymore because I just realized I don't want to marry you. Is that the only way to validate a relationship? Is that you're planning on marrying that person? You'll start to recognize that a lot of people have, I don't need to worry about in the moment so much as I'm working towards my future, or I'm planning and plotting on my future. And if you ain't going to be the man to marry me or the woman to marry me, I ain't going to spend the time on you. Okay, fantastic. I'm glad that you have an idea that there's a crystal ball out there and that you need to behave in such a way that you're going to have privilege to that crystal ball. If you go through your life avoiding lessons, you'll have your life lived retarded in those lessons. It's pretty damn simple. So if you're with somebody right now and you're on the fence whether you're going to marry them or not, how old are you? How many relationships from the age of 20, when people get married in their teens or 20s, do they actually make it to the later years? Now, I'm not saying anything's wrong by early divorce either, but a lot of people rush marriage. They don't actually get to know each other, especially in the sense that, and I discussed this with a friend of mine recently, and I just barely mentioned it, but people make business plans, and they will consider that to be a wise decision to make a business plan. Now, some of the hardships of business plans are that you can't predict the future. You can only go by with what your past has given you as an experience and what your desires have and how your past helps govern those desires. That's how you predict a future. Right? There's not a clairvoyance-ness that I've tapped into or that I know of anyone who has, other than the people that I've interviewed that have been charlatans. So I haven't really come across any factual psychics. So with that, I haven't met every single one of them either, but I haven't met any of them that actually make me believe it. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a unicorn statement. But with this, I can't tell you how my future is going to go. You can't tell me how your future is going to go. I can't tell you how my business is going to go in a week, let alone a month or a year, because I am so open to development. I know how I would like for it to go at this moment. Will I completely trash it and revamp it? Probably not. But will it possibly take another turn that I do not foresee? To the degree of maturity that I have at this point in my business, I would say that it's a moderate level of maturity. It's not a beginner level and it's not an expert level yet, because I'm 7+ years into my business, going into 8 years, almost at 8 years. So well on its way there. That's what I meant to say. I learned that what I wished my business to be, and the day that I sat down with a CPA and decided to make an LLC, a S Corp, I knew at that moment what I wanted it to look like, but I wasn't sure. 1 month in, I was getting even more excited about it. I was in a honeymoon with the idea of business. 1 year into it, there were some things that I'd realized that were fantasies to my current, at the level of skill set that I had when I set out with the fantasy. As 2 years went on, I realized that what I thought at 1 year was also limited by the comparison and viewpoints and experiences that I'd had in 2 years. And then within 3 years, the same thing compounding on top of what I knew about from year 2, and continue down the line. And different timelines, I came across different technologies and also knowledges or information that would help me shift into another perspective. Now, this is a living business plan. It is no longer a 5-year business plan and basic statement. It is a living 5-year business plan. From this point to the next 5 years, I have the predictability of my past experiences and the desires that I have and the abilities that my desires are governed by my past experiences, with the understanding in my past experiences that there are plenty of things that I was unaware of that showed up, and I adapted to those things showing up, whether they were desirable or less than desirable. I still, nonetheless, continued along the process. And at this point, I am still continuing along the process. At this point, I am also far more vested in my internet life and my internet-based business and the education technologies portion of my business than I am in the physical portions of my business. Like in the sense of, as far as the human manual is concerned, there is one area out of the 8 that centers and mainly focuses on the physical body and the training context and what it takes to be healthy. Now, that's 1 in 8 areas. It is probably one of the most proficient areas for me, and also one of the more boring areas for me. But my business has grown into the human manual from being a lowly old personal trainer. Now, the human manual is beyond holistic. Now, this is a lot of evolution that has taken place in simply 7 years. Okay, almost 8 years. It's a lot of evolution that has taken place in my business that was all brought on by adaptation to hardships or joys. You adapt to both sides, by the way. You don't just adapt to hardships. You adapt to joys. You adapt to every experience that you have. And when you experience something else that's more desirable, you usually line yourself up in such a way to try to experience that more desirable experience once again, and more predominantly if it really is very desirable. And the undesirable, you try to learn in a very wise way. You try to learn the lessons that are necessary so that you do not feel or have to go through those hardships again unnecessarily. Now, do you see at this point in the video how I'm tying or going to tie this back into the relationship context? This is my relationship with my business. I have granted my partner the ability, as we also seek out creating and having a family, I have granted her the right in the relationship, and not as if I didn't give it, she wouldn't have the right, but our relationship would suffer because I did not knowingly go into it understanding that we have the abilities to grow apart or together. It's a very mature place in the sense that I actually recognize that where we are at this moment is where we are. Am I ready to marry her? No. Am I ready to leave her? No. Am I happy with her? Yes. Am I sad with her? Yes. Am I every single emotion at different times with her? Yes. So don't validate everything off of one particular viewpoint. You see, I do not do that, and I will not box my lover and my girlfriend or my partner into, you have to behave this way moving forward. She will be 40 moving next year, early next year. I will be 36 in less than a half a month. There's a little bit of a distance, but not much between us in age. Is there something wrong with the idea that I'm not out to marry her at the moment? Will I marry her in the future? I don't know. I don't. I don't have a way of predicting that. I'm enjoying my time with her. Am I rushing her to the altar? No. Do I believe in marriage? I know a lot of things. I don't believe in a lot of things. So I know the bounds of the relationships and how to create a healthy relationship, and also how to create a healthy marriage. But it requires maturity in order to facilitate both people's desires and needs to develop themselves together and separately. So if I restrict her out of insecurities from behaving in a specific way, I am actually challenging a relationship. If I do not have a full understanding with her on what those areas of development is that she requires, and if I'm restricting her out of an insecurity. Because if I restrict her out of an insecurity and she accepts that restriction, she is helping me fortify my insecurity. Now, if I offer a restriction based out of an insecurity, which is not common for me, but if I offer a restriction based out of an insecurity, it is my partner's job, and I have given her permission to hold me accountable, and I have her enrolled in holding me accountable, in bringing it to my attention that I am functioning in an insecurity. And if I wish to continue to live my life with that insecurity, then I'm granted that permission to do so. But my agreement with her is that I overcome all insecurities with a clause that if I want to be on it, I'm allowed to be on it. But also with the understanding that if I'm on it, that one, what I say won't be taken as seriously because I'm not in my fully rational state of mind, which is not very common, but it does happen. So if I'm not in that full rational state of mind, the things that I say and do are not permanently held against me, but yet what they are is that's evidence to the areas that I'm insecure and in which I need to go to work because it's my commitment to myself. And my partner helps me address these areas by bringing them to my awareness. This is as simple as saying that you can know all you wish to know in the world about death. And as much as you think you can be prepared for loss, if you have never lost someone close to you, no matter of preparation will ever prepare you for that. You have to experience it in order to know it. The same thing as riding a bicycle. Well, that's the exact same things in all these contexts. Now, you see, my relationship with my partner is a living plan for a relationship and a living commitment that we have given each other, so we are not locked in at the day we met each other and the hopes and ambitions and desires that we had formulated and also had been infected by because our parents and our early authorities, not just our parents, and I'm not blaming anyone on this, but just giving you an understanding to the developmental functions. So we had adopted early authorities, or we had authorities that adopted ideas, or we had adopted ideas through those individuals in order to view life a specific way, and also encourages us to believe a relationship is supposed to be a specific way. Now, there is a social position that little girls are susceptible to, and you can usually find them. They're the ones running around with tiaras and little princess dresses that really find themselves ideologically identifying themselves with princesses. And the boys that run around and they identify themselves with, it's not as common, which is the Prince Charmings or the princes, right? The ones that are going to save the princess. That's not as common. I haven't seen as many children behaving that way as far as boys, but yet that is the other side of the princess, right? The prince. Now, there's a lot of different things that influence us at a young age. I'm not going to go into necessarily the parental complexes, like father and mother complexes. I'm not going to go into that, or why we sometimes, according to Freud, and I don't completely disagree, nor do I completely agree to his reasoning, why we date people like our parents. Or there's a lot of people out there that seem to, when they're guys, seem to date women that are like their mother, or even at times like their father, depending on the personality trait. Sometimes the visual factors or the physical body factors. Some guys may date women that look a lot like their mother in some way, shape, or form. Now, as far as I'm concerned throughout this entire process, the legitimacy of the idea that if you're not going to marry the person you're with at this moment, you need to take your hands off another person's wife or husband. If you wish to avoid lessons, take that advice. If you do not wish to avoid lessons and you want a life fulfilled, start learning on how to derive lessons out of all of the experiences you have and how to start walking through a lot of your thoughts and stop writing them off into matter of facts about anything. Marriage is not the epiphany of success in a relationship. Marriage is a deep commitment between two people, sometimes more than two people, depending on the belief system or where they're located. So marriage is predicated on the idea of deep commitment between two or more people. That's it. Okay, that does not signify to the world that you two have made it. That's the final destination of a relationship. Not at all. America has shown very easily that we are very good at marrying early, immature, and we get divorced to prove the success rate of marriages, because marriages are not measured by whether people get divorced as far as successful. When you get married, and the vows is till death do us part in most people's vows. That's the direction for success in a relationship. Be together through thick and thin. A lot of people don't fully understand that because they're committing at a less than mature position for that distinction of commitment. It doesn't mean that they're immature, bad people or anything like that. They don't have the life experiences yet to understand how to hold that as a vow for the person that they're with. And most of the time, their person they're with doesn't have the ability to help them grow through their challenges or even grow through their own challenges. They lack the capacity. So with all of that being said, to tell people and to make statements like, if you're not going to marry her, take your hands off someone's future wife. I say, screw you with your statement. You do not understand the depth, both directions, both from your past and crediting the values of what you've gone through in your past, not just with people, but with yourself. And you do not understand the predictabilities of your relationship. Just because you feel you love that person right now, 10 years from now, you may not feel that way. If you haven't spent enough time to really get to know the person and explore that person as far as you possibly can in all elements and all activities, to understand who that person is cognitively under pressure as well as when they're in pleasure. It doesn't matter. If you don't know how to be with that person in all these different aspects, you don't know if that person's on your side or not. If you haven't gone through the 8 areas of how to qualify a person's maturity on your own, for yourself and for the people in your life, you are you're playing a roulette game where the gun is almost fully loaded. That is not in your favor for a long-term relationship. It's time to get curious about yourself, and it's time to get curious about your partners. Start getting curious. Get adventurous. You know how hard it is to live with somebody whenever you have 2 different political ideologies? Vastly. There's going to be things you cannot talk about together without getting compassionate, or to get passionately driven, not compassionately, but passionately driven towards differing minds and arguing. I have the capacity to have an argument, or actually a disagreement with my partner, really push through conflict resolved, not managed, but resolved, where that conflict doesn't come back and we can be completely with each other without resentment. Yeah, it's possible, but it's not a lustful state. We are not in year 1 or 2 together, been together for a little while, and we're still discovering all kinds of awesome things about each other. And I mean awesome things on all sides of every spectrum, right? Things that we're not so, and things that we are absolutely keen on. I don't hold anything against her. By the way, you can hold the good times against your partner as well. I'll leave you with this thought. You can absolutely hold partner. This is when you've raised the bar and expectations for how your partner will be with you, even if it's once in a while. Raise the bar. You 1 rose and you get used to 1 rose. If I buy it every once a month, you'll get to the point where you expect once a rose. If not, something must be wrong. If I do it for 6 months straight in the setting, and you may question the validity of our relationship. It's a conditioning factor. It's like Pavlov's dog. We do this, all right? So if I up the ante and I buy you 1 rose for the first couple of months, and then I buy you 2 roses, and I keep upping the ante every couple of months, when I get to the top and I buy or do something unbelievably extravagant or whatever, and then I peter off because maybe I spent how much I spent due to the depth of my financial abilities and well-being. I didn't privilege you down to the absolute truth, or the depths of it, not necessarily truth, but the depths of it. And I might have actually overspent out of the excitement and joys that I have for you and with you, or spent in that excitement because I didn't rationally, I got a little irrational. And then I couldn't extravagant thing for a little while. I could still be expressing how much I love you and how much I care for you and how much I enjoy being with you. And those roses start falling to the extravagant. How I'm holding now to hold the good time rather than the wishfulness experienced. If it's you're holding a hold against me, things you haven't experienced. One, you might be of perfection in another relationship that is lustfully driven or romantically driven or whatever input you've actually been programmed by this, or the way that you actually were inflicted by the idea that you were supposed to behave a certain way, whether it was a movie or a series or whatever, or a book or whatever, had made you think, oh, this is the way we should do things. I would really like to be treated. Never enrolled me. And by the way, mentioning time, 18 years, I mean, that's not enrollment. That's mentioning. How much something to you in those 18 years that you did not take for granted that he really wanted, and you have no idea any of it, and he's not even holding it against you. Sometimes he does. I'm not an advocate for one of sexist by any specific direct care. I'm just using that as a living example at the moment, and just to walk through it. So with that, that's the final thought I wanted to leave with you. You can definitely hold good times against somebody, just like you hold past relationships will be inherited relationships and secretly and covertly held against the person you're with, just waiting for them to do that thing for you that somebody else did. And if they don't, maybe they don't love you as much as the other person. There's a lot of mind games that we play. As he's awesome. He once said is it get out of it. What he means by that, find yourself trying to figure things out. It's a dark, dangerous neighborhood full of violence and all kinds of ideas, and that are, when you're lost, walking around in your head, you're not likely going to think a whole lot of great things about anything. You're more likely going to think about how to survive the experience. Video for another time, but look for it. Some of those dangers. Optimism versus pessimism and all that. All right, I won't get into that very much. Again, this is Chad Everett Broshears. I am the host of Growing Up in the Wilds of Suburbia. So it was brought to you by the Human Manual. These guys are awesome. Mainly because I'm talking about me and my company. These guys are awesome, and they have some great educational programs. Will be available November 1st, 2000. Find it on the Human Manual, the Human Manual's website. It's thehumanmanual.net. Humanmanual.net. All right, boys and girls. Again, this is Chad Everett Broshears. Comment below, post it on your social medias, put it on Google+, put it in a bottle card and send it out to the ocean. I don't, just go ahead and share it if you like it and you agree. Comment below. I'm happy to entertain comments. All right, guys. Thank you very much. Have a good day.